Hello, everyone. My name is Bala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist, and your co-host for the next hour on DisrupTV. We welcome you to join us on Twitter using the handle @DisrupTV Show. Send Ray and I and our distinguished guests your questions using hashtag DisrupTV. We also encourage you to look at the 175 plus interviews we have on our podcast and check them out on SoundCloud and iTunes and our videos on YouTube and Vimeo. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research, regular contributor to Harvard Business Review, Forbes, ZDNet, best-selling author of the book, Disrupting Digital Business, and one of the best follows on Twitter @RWANG0. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, thanks a lot. Welcome to the mobile edition here. And I'm really excited here with my co-host, Bala Afshar. He is, as many folks know, one of the top CIO, CMO influencers in the world. He is the chief digital evangelist at Salesforce. And more importantly, he is followed by so many folks for his HuffPo blogs, as well as his book. And so, but that's not important. We've got a cool guest on, a bi-coastal individual. Let's introduce him.
It is our honor, Ray, to have our first guest, Miguel Gamiño, CTO, Chief Technology Officer for New York City, under the leadership of Mayor Bill de Blasio. As CTO, Miguel is leading major technology initiatives for the city, including development of meaningful and innovative smart city and Internet of Things strategy in a collaboration with city agencies, private industries, academia, aimed at fulfilling Mayor de Blasio's promise to provide every New Yorker and New York City business access to affordable, reliable, high-speed broadband service throughout New York City by 2025. What an awesome, meaningful purpose. Prior to becoming the CTO for New York City, Miguel served as the Chief Information Officer and Executive Director of Department of Technology for the City and County of San Francisco. That's when I first met Miguel. His team and colleagues brought broadband to the mainstream conversation and charted courses for a connected city of the future. As an industry technologist, he participates in thought leadership conversations with global colleagues, emphasizing the significance of pervasive broadband connectivity and the value of disrupting civic services through digital transformation. I had to cut all his award and nominations because we only have 20 minutes. He's the proud recipient of 2017 High Tech 100, 2016 State IT Executive of the Year, 2016 Top 25 Doers, Dreamers, Drivers, and he's on numerous lists as one of the most social and accessible technologists and thought leaders in the world. Another must follow on Twitter @MiguelGamino. Welcome, Miguel.
Thanks, Mala. Thanks, Ray. I have to say, among all those awards, one of my favorite is your list. Social CIO is an important part of the job for sure.
You are one of the best, no question. No question.
You are definitely, and you're about to get one, but we can't tell you what that is. So hang in tight for a couple minutes. There's something coming. This is a preview. I cannot say anything more.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert! So, but hey, last time we talked, you were in the city of San Francisco, the great city of San Francisco, doing some awesome stuff. What's changed? What got you back to New York, and why'd you answer the call?
Well, you know, I have to say that what was really compelling to me was that the Mayor de Blasio really impressed upon me a good understanding for the role technology has to play in non-technology but traditional civic objectives to make the city inclusive and strengthen the community, strengthen the middle class, create opportunity and jobs, and create a healthier environment for all New Yorkers. And so contextualizing technology in that way was really really meaningful to me, because that has been my kind of consistent thread, even back to my days in the private sector, has always been about what impact can we have that positively affects the way people live or work with technology as a tool, not as it's a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. And so that kind of approach to it, and the fact that frankly, New York is the biggest city in the country and you know, unmatched by very many cities in the world, it was also a very good place to have a global solid impact, which was always, you know, that was the objective also, was a truly global scope, even back to the days in San Francisco when, you know, we talked, I think last time I was on Disrupt we were talking about how we had formed a group that aligned global thought leaders, my colleagues and peers in countries and cities in countries all over the planet that have these same concerns. And so New York was an opportunity to frankly kind of level up on that front in terms of our global impact and that sort of thing.
So you know, you obviously had an incredible, challenging, rewarding role before going to New York City as you know, CIO of one of the most tech-savvy cities in the country, in the world. But now you go, as you said, to the most populated city in the country, approaching 9 million, you know, citizens. You've got 80+% of the citizens, adult citizens, have high school degrees. North of 40% have college degrees. You've got the second largest GDP in the world, only behind Tokyo, at $1.6 trillion. So highly populated, highly educated, highly affluent. How does that impact your role as a CTO, and what are some of the trends that you're watching in order to really lead this digital revolution in what would most consider, you know, the epicenter of the world, New York City?
Yeah, it's, you know, that scale offers a lot of opportunity and some challenge, right? I mean, that was the other thing that the mayor impressed upon me as we were talking about, you know, my joining the organization, was we wanted to make sure that we were doing things that could go to scale. And when we say scale in New York, you're talking about nearly 9 million people. For example, we have 1.1 million students in public schools in New York City. So that student population is larger than many city populations. In fact, that student population is greater than the population of San Francisco. So, you know, everything here has that significant scale that we have to be concerned with. And so that's a challenge in some regards, because we have to think about things like that, right? We have to think about, how does this eventually, is it able to reach that kind of scale? But at the same time, it's an opportunity because we've got so much ability to influence the conversation and the direction of the industry, because we represent such a significant scale opportunity. And then, you know, a lot of cities, those that I have strong active relationships with, and even some that I don't, are paying attention to what we're doing in New York. So I think we even, in some ways, represent the opportunity beyond what is already massive scale in New York. So that creates the opportunity to have a different kind of dialogue with, you know, the thought leaders that are not inside government, and bring them into that conversation, because we have a really compelling story, really compelling scalability model to influence the thinking and the direction, and bring them into helping us at the highest levels. The most talented people on earth can be you know, attracted to helping us think about some of these problems in New York. So that scale is, like I said, it's both challenge, but it's also significant opportunity.
I don't know if that's Ray driving through. All right. I don't know, Ray's. Are you back, Ray? He's on mute.
So one of the things that's really interesting is that you've got this open data planning initiative, Miguel, and you're talking about massive scale, right? You can scale, you can democratize access in ways that you can't before. Talk a little bit about what that is and how that's actually changing the lives, and will change the lives of the average New Yorker.
Well, I think, yeah, open data has a particular unique kind of history in New York. Lots of cities, in fact, San Francisco was one of the very early adopters of the notion of the value of open data. But what New York did a little differently than most cities, maybe differently than any city, was they actually legislated it. So in New York, open data is a law. It's not just a policy or an executive directive. It's actual law, which meant you got a different level of buy-in and support for what that really means. So I think New York is definitely a front runner in that space. And we've got a great team that's doing a lot with it. But now we're also trying to think about, where does it go from here? There's north of 50,000 new users, I think, a month visiting our open data portal. And so the significance of it is certainly validated. But we have to, again, kind of back to the theme of the responsibility New York bears is not lost on us. We have to really think about how to shape it going forward in a way that will contribute to kind of the evolution of the concepts of open data.
I mean, it's crazy. You got 140,000 users each month, 50,000 new users coming through. I mean, people are looking at data. They're looking for patterns. They're looking ways that can help out. I mean, people are innovating against that. I mean, it's just pretty exciting stuff that you have going there. And all the data collection too that's out there.
One of the things we're thinking about is kind of open data 2.0. So I don't think I've spoken about it real publicly yet. So you heard it here first, right?
Another breaking announcement.
Yeah, breaking news. But I think we're thinking about open data 2.0, and what I mean by that is, we're thinking about our IoT strategy and our smart city strategy, and how data is such an important component of the outcomes that we can get. It's like one of the critical raw materials, if you will, to what we're trying to produce as a finished product in the IoT and smart city space. And so I think, we're thinking about how to make streaming data or sensor-driven data consumable and in an open fashion to startups and big existing companies alike, so that they can think about the next kind of wave of innovation or development that can happen benefited by that open data 2.0 approach. So it's still very early days in terms of thinking about how we materialize that, but that's a very solid core element to our IoT strategy or smart city strategy is the notion of making the data open and available to people who want to help build solutions to those civic challenges.
And as you discuss your IoT strategy, and you've said that New York City government is leading example in terms of IoT guidelines and commitment to providing insights, but also balancing privacy, individual privacy and security first. Let's talk about the mayor's goal to ensure every resident and business will have access to affordable, reliable, and high-speed broadband by 2025. Talk to us about that enormous challenge that's incredibly exciting and, again, puts New York on the forefront of creating a resilient, connected community.
Yeah, well, the first thing I wanted to say, again, to kind of further evidence what we talked about in terms of the scale and uniqueness of New York is, quite literally, I'm not aware of any city on earth that has accomplished what we're attempting to accomplish in the conditions that we're trying to do it in. And so what I mean by that is there are some big cities with high density that have accomplished mass distribution of broadband, but they might not have the democratic environment that we live in, which has lots of pros and offers some nuances that are not insignificant. And so I think you put it in that context to make sure that almost 9 million people have access to affordable, high-speed, resilient, and dependable broadband service in every corner of a city this large, and has multiple options to do so in the environment we live in, where we really respect and invite active democratic participation in some of these sorts of discussions. That's huge. And so I'm really proud that my team, we've made in just the few months I've been here, we've made just amazing progress on moving that forward, which is a testament to the will and commitment of the administration from the top all the way down to seeing this through. So we are getting much closer to releasing some elements of our strategic thinking and we're moving forward with many of those objectives. So you will see a lot of that coming forward very, very quickly. But I have to tell you, like I said, in just a few months that I've been here, the progress we've been making is outstanding. So before the end of the year, you will see material progress being on more public display when we get to those kind of appropriate points in the very near future.
No surprise why you keep winning doers, dreamers, and drivers awards. There's only someone with as much grit as intellect that you have can do something like this. So thank you. I mean, congratulations. It's amazing.
Thank you. I think, I've been saying this for a long time. In fact, going all the way back to my private sector days, when I was a business partner to the city of El Paso and deploying, one of the first public Wi-Fi services in the country in what was and might still be the poorest household income neighborhood in the country.
Wow.
We did that, I think, maybe 15 years ago. I'm dating myself now. So from a personal journey perspective, to have kind of loosely formed objectives or personal beliefs in the area of broadband, and I say that because back then I was investing in it with like a gut feeling that this was super important to the future, but it was 15 or 20 years ago, so it was not as clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for that to come full circle in the largest city in the country, one of the most important cities on earth, and really driving hard to bring this to reality is very solid. Yeah, like to complete my personal journey, like I was onto something after all.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna?
No, it was huge.
After this, you're gonna join Musk and go to Mars. I mean, what are you gonna do after this?
What's next?
There's an open invitation, Elon. Call me, man.
He's in. He's in for the 4G training.
That's right. We'll figure out how to put internet on Mars, because we need to openly acknowledge none of us are actually moving there unless there's broadband.
Oh, yeah, no question.
And that's a deal breaker.
If I can't tweet, I'm not going.
That's right. We don't even get coffee when there's no Wi-Fi. Why would we go? Why would we colonize a planet with no broadband?
You're looking for galactic internet net neutrality.
That's right.
He wants the same broadband speeds in Mars as in New York City.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, question for you. There's something that you formed that was awesome. And I think a lot of city CIOs tell us about this. The Council of City CIOs. What is that? How do people join? What are some of the best practices? Why did you put this together?
So this all started, for me anyway, I think, to be fair, I think lots of CIOs around the globe had this pent up need or thought that it would be important for us to align ourselves. So I want to say it just out loud that I can't take credit for inventing it. I participated in organizing it. So and the fact that it's organized so rapidly is based on that. The fact that it wasn't like it took a lot to get people on board, because I think lots of people were going along kind of independent routes to try to collect our group together, right, around the world. So, but a few years ago in Barcelona is actually where the conversation started for me with a former CIO named Manel. We've organized a breakfast, or he organized the breakfast, and I attended and helped follow up afterwards. But we established the concept of a global CIO club, and he left. He left and went on to different things, and so it kind of languished. And that was what struck me, that, when I was in San Francisco still, we needed to really formalize it so that as those of us individually come and go from these roles, that the organization would last. And so that was why I really wanted to formalize it. And so I reached out to a bunch of people, but one of the people I happened to meet around that time was Archana, who's the CTO of DC.
Yeah.
And again, she was also thinking about and even maybe pursuing similar ideas, as were many CIOs and CTOs around the world. And so we just decided to join forces, and we co-founded this group called the Council of Global City CIOs. We have 10 founding cities. Those cities are San Francisco, New York, obviously, DC, Austin, Boston, Seattle, Atlanta, Chicago, and then The Hague and Dubai.
Oh, wow.
And so those are the founders, and we've been, working through how to really organize the entity so that we can. Lots of other CIOs and CTOs have been asking, "Hey, I'm ready to join. Sign me up." And we've been just trying to, frankly, get our act together to figure out exactly how we can do that, so that it, again, always the focusing on the notion that it needs to survive any one of us, right? Yeah. So we're now at the point where we're organizing that, and we'll be opening kind of membership to many other cities. Some of them we've already spoken with and are kind of like warm prospects, but I think we'll also find many other new prospects when we make that much more, when we're ready to engage with many more cities. But I'd certainly see this being an organization that has, maybe even chapters in different parts of the world that can organize kind of somewhat regionally, but ultimately is connecting the whole kind of global community. And the underlying reason that this is so powerful is that we're all trying to do the same thing. Yeah. We're joking about putting broadband on Mars, but the truth is, if we ever did want to colonize another planet, I guarantee you we would make sure there was running water and internet, right?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, exactly. And iPhone chargers. It's a real, like broadband, for example, that concept is a global concern. No matter what hemisphere you're in or what language you speak, you're trying to connect your community to the global community of the internet. And so that's an example of something that is a concern that doesn't respect politics, boundaries, geographies, language, or anything else. That is a technological concern that we have universally. So there are some other similar sorts of things that really transcend the planet that is very useful for us to be organized and sharing with each other the progress we're making in our own communities.
Hey, thanks so much for being on the show. This has been awesome. We've been with Miguel Gamiño, CTO of New York City. You can follow him at Twitter at MiguelGamino, a repeat guest on DisrupTV show. Thanks for being on the show this Friday.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Miguel, if you want to share the story of the council and the vision, join us at Dreamforce. Love to get you on a panel with other council members and learn about the mission of CDCIO. So hopefully you keep that in mind. Second week in November. And we're going to transition from our talking to the Chief Technology Officer in New York City to one of the most connected and a true thought leader, CIO of another city, waiting for our second guest to join us. Ray, where are you? Are you in your car somewhere?
I am here live at the Microsoft Mountain View campus. I don't know why I'm here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually here because my son is in this BizSmart camp, and they're doing their finals, and they present them here. So they're doing something here, and I'm just waiting in the parking lot for now until I hop out. But it's been a crazy week and lots of interesting developments. But I think it's very cool listening what CIOs are doing in cities and what technologies and challenges they have. What do we have today? We've got Jonathan, right? Let's go ahead.
This is an incredible honor for us because we have back-to-back true trailblazers in terms of leading cities in their digital transformation journey. We have Jonathan Feldman, who's the Chief Information Officer for the city of Asheville, North Carolina, where his business background and tendencies to seek out trouble have helped him to create positive change in government. Asheville is a rapidly growing and popular city based on quality of life, natural beauty, and tourism. During Jonathan's leadership, the city has been recognized nationally and internationally for improving services for citizens and reducing expenses through cutting-edge digital practices and technology. Notably, the city of Asheville was the first American city in the Southeast to publish an open data catalog. Jonathan has been named the top CIO to follow by Huffington Post 3 years in a row and has been honored by Frost & Sullivan CIO Impact Award. Another must follow, and you guys can pick up the trend by now. Ray and I only invite guests that are must follows on Twitter at _JFELDMAN. Welcome, Jonathan, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much, Val.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. And as Val was saying, we love people that share, and take the time on Fridays to do this. One of the things that you're doing is really incredible. And as we look at the background, what we're looking at, is that the map of Asheville, or what do we have back there?
That is a something like 1970s or 80s map of Asheville. And as you know, Geographic Information Systems is a keystone app for any city, right? You got to know where to dispatch firefighters, police officers, that kind of thing. So you got to be really, really good at it. I actually inherited this map from probably like two people ago, and I said, "Oh," and they said, "Do you want to get rid of it?" And I said, "For God's sake, no! It's such big technology for its time, right?" So it's a big part of what we do.
No, it's awesome. I mean, you've got an awesome city known for awesome art scene and awesome architecture. But in the world of digital transformation, right? Why is it important to government in the 21st century? What does it look like? What does it mean for the average citizen in Asheville?
Well, when I talk to my staff, right? I mean, let's start there. When I talk to my staff about things like cloud computing or digital transformation, I'm always saying to them, and I'm from New York, so I'm really blunt. You can either get on the bus or you can get run over by the bus, right?
With no expletives. That's amazing.
and it's this, I don't know if you've read the book Switch by...
Oh, I love that book.
It's a book, right? And so you got to hit people emotionally, and then you can explain what you mean. But, with digital transformation, you're either going to get disrupted or you're going to choose to do the right things to become a digital organization because, oh, by the way, every citizen that you're interacting with is already there in their personal life. And in terms of their ability to use the cloud, to leverage digital technologies, they've got, the iPhone, they had iPhones at a time where IT organizations were saying, you have to use BlackBerry because security. Don't use anything else. And of course we know how that turned out, right? But they have, and I'm fond of saying, most citizens have more computing power at home than most office workers do at work. Right. And so when you multiply that by the power of, here in Asheville, there are 400,000 people in the metropolitan statistical area. There are 1,100 city employees. Y'all were outnumbered. So it's critical that we become more responsive and more able to serve these folks in the way that they're used to being served by Amazon, by Facebook, by Apple, by Google. Because if we don't, we're not meeting the expectation. They have digital age expectations. And that, there are a lot of reasons why. There are a lot of consequences to not adopting digital, right? But let me give you just a really small slice of life. It used to be that you could have a public meeting and the same 50 people show up, your frequent flyers. And nowadays, if you do that and you make decisions based on that, and you haven't done any kind of digital outreach, you can expect that there will be immediate, massive threads on Facebook, massive threads on, there's this one Asheville politics group. And as a politician and as a city manager, that's not exactly what you want, right? You want the decisions that you make to make people happy. And so that's just a small slice of what happens if you can't modernize your systems to meet people's expectations.
Sure. And it's stunning for Ray and I and our audience to, when we talk to folks like yourself and Miguel, where you guys are operating on a scale that's 400,000 or 9 million, where you still have operational responsibilities in terms of availability and resiliency and security and privacy. So, and this may be asking a question, what's more important, breathing or eating? But what's more important, operational excellence or being a trailblazer and a disruptive innovator, or do they go hand in hand?
You know, it is a trick question, right? Because here's the thing. Somebody is a complete screw up on your staff. Are you giving them a cool project to do? No, right?
Hell no.
And so I believe that operational excellence is the foundation upon which you can build innovation on. And I think, frankly, a lot of startups fail because they're so busy being innovative and their operations stink. And that's a problem when you have like paying customers who expect things like availability and who expect things like good customer service, right? So I've got one of the best operations managers in the universe. Her name's Wanda Burgess. Hi, Wanda. And she is constantly like, you know, I'm like flying off in the sky and she's going, Jonathan, operations, wait. Before we do this cloud-based disaster recovery, let's make sure that the stuff at the DR center is working. Because what happens if it doesn't work? And then inevitably, I'm going back to her in like 3 weeks and saying, Wanda, you are so right. You are so right, you know? So I think you need to listen to your people who are really good at ops. Because I think as a big picture thinker, it's really easy to dismiss people who are in the details as bureaucratic or, you know, or fear-based or whatever. But I think if you have a good relationship and you listen to them, they're really the giants that we are standing on the shoulders of when we're trying to create innovation at our organization. So as you surmised, I think it's both.
Great Jonathan's success is due to Wanda.
Say it again?
I said we have great news. Jonathan's success is due to Wanda. So that's
that's the headline. No, but you know, but what's awesome here is, right, you're kind of painting the picture of what these future cities should be doing and what smart cities or what future local government should be looking like. Help us paint the vision. Like, what do you think is important? I mean, a citizen born in the year 2030, right? What would they expect their rights, responsibilities, and privileges to be?
We have you on mute, Jonathan.
How'd that happen?
Well, it was a brilliant answer. Let's move on to the next question.
So I think there are two aspects to that. And I think aspect number one is, what is city staff going to look like? And number two, what is the outside world going to look like? And to start to kind of frame that, I think you've got to look at what's going on with the civic tech movement. You know, Jen Palka, who's the executive director of Code for America, which is just one of the most profoundly impactful not-for-profits in this country. I firmly believe that democracy is alive and well in local. I'm a lot more concerned about federal and state. We won't go there. But, you know, when we talk about what's happening with democracy, it's really at the city level. You can go meet your leaders. You know, you can knock on their doors, you know. And what she's doing with civic tech and what she's done with volunteer brigades of civic technologists, where, you know, the way I explain this to my city manager is, hey, all of a sudden the community has an IT organization.
Yeah.
You know? And we're the IT organization for the internal structure. And one of the key challenges is that cities are still running as traditional top-down command and control organizations. And, you know, one of the guys here, Eric Jackson, and I, who's a fabulous guy, used to work for Dell. I mean, he chooses to work here because this is a great place to work and we can have an impact, you know. He's a brilliant guy. And he and I have been riffing off each other, you know, what's going to work with a digital organization and what's not going to work for a digital organization in terms of behaviors.
Sure.
Because that's so important. And we've been blogging about it at our blog, which is digitalsimplicity.io. And one of the things that doesn't work is this command and control and micromanage and take no risks. And, you know, and seriously, I mean, you know, we talk a lot about acting like a startup, and then, you know, the naysayers say, well, you mean you're going out of business. And so I started saying, we really want to be, you know, venture capitalists, right? And we want to kill programs that don't work, and we, you know, sustain and boost and give funding rounds to programs that do work.
That's awesome.
And I think that's where we have to go internally with cities. As far as externally, I think what you're going to see is more of a nuanced, data-driven conversation. And I think our brigade, our Code for America brigade, has done something that I think very few brigades have done. They've said, you know, we're not here to just do technology for the sake of technology. We're here to do technology to create meaningful and impactful social change. And so, you know, the captain of the brigade said, oh, great. You know, when we put together a parking app based on open data, no one got upset about that. But we started putting together data analysis for homelessness, and now I'm public enemy #1, you know, because I disagree with staff, right? And I think that's natural. I think it's normal. It has to happen. And what we need to realize as city staff, and what the outside, you know, what citizens need to, there are two things. Citizens need to realize that it's not us versus the government. The government is us. The government is all of us. I live here. Do I want this to become a horrendous, horrible place to live? No. City staff, on the other hand, really has to learn that advocate does not mean enemy of the state. Right. Advocate means, hooray, democracy's working, right? And when they use data, we should be delighted, because that is a much more productive conversation than what tends to go on in other political spheres with gaslighting and bullying and all that kind of stuff.
So it feels like that your team's approach to digital transformation is democratizing access to data inside, outside your organization, and really practicing what we had a former guest here who talked about radical transparency.
Yeah.
That really fuels collaboration and trust. So I guess my question to you, what advice do you have to CIOs in terms of really having successful digital transformation within their businesses, whether it's an enterprise or a startup, you know, or an entrepreneur in a garage?
I mean, #1, you know, you have renegades in your department, right? Engage them. I mean, you have troublemakers. Troublemakers are awesome at innovation, right? Because they're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. I want to do something different, right? When we first went into cloud, I enlisted like the most, you know, pugnacious guy in the department. And I said, you know, I think everyone in the infrastructure team is going to be really upset about this. And he said, excellent, you know. Right?
You found the right team.
Right. You know? And so enlisted troublemakers, but I also think, you know, and Jen Palka talks about this, it's got to be carrot, not stick. You know, because as it turns out, and this is true of like managing employees, it's true of dealing with customers. We're highly customer focused. We're highly human focused. Yep. And as it turns out, beating the tar out of somebody does not make for a good relationship. and
what? The beatings will continue until morale improves. What do you
mean? Ray, I did a TEDx talk on just that subject like many years ago. You know, but you got it, you know. And so when you do things not only for your customers, but with your customers, when they have a voice and it's something you're doing together and you're accomplishing something together, that's the road to digital.
Wow. We are here with Jonathan Feldman, CIO, City of Asheville, North Carolina. You can follow him at _J Feldman, FELDMAN. He's definitely an advocate of thinking in digital transformation, but more importantly, being able to think broadly in terms of public thinking versus personal branding. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Jonathan.
Great, thanks so much.
Terrific. You crushed it. And, you know, that's awesome, having two troublemakers with Miguel and Jonathan. We're going to end with another troublemaker, but in a good way.
Well, is this the troublemaker issue? What is this doing here?
Yeah. I think there's a theme to this this episode. We've got three troublemakers who are, as Jobs used to say, putting a dent in the universe.
I think this is Aubrey's secret plan.
This is our cleanup hitter spot, and we have what is surely a first ballot future Hall of Fame inductee into the DisrupTV world, Heather Clancy, editorial director of Green Biz. Green Biz advances the opportunities at the intersection of business, technology, and sustainability. Through their website, their events, their peer-to-peer network and research, Green Biz has been promoting the potential to drive transformation and accelerate progress within companies, industries, in the very nature of business. Heather is an award-winning business journalist specializing in coverage of transformative technologies and in translating tech speak, which we all read, to business benefits. Her articles have appeared in Entrepreneur, Fortune, International Herald Tribune, New York Times, and many more media outlets. Another awesome must follow on Twitter. Again, that's our rule when we invite guests. At Green Tech Lady, GREENTECHLADY. Welcome, Heather. Welcome back, Heather, to DisrupTV.
Hi, guys. How are you? Ray, where are you?
I am at the Mountain View Microsoft Center.
I was waiting for someone to get in the car and start singing with you, but no.
Yes. We've got to do it. Well, you know, there's a picture of me with Vince Cerf, Bob Johansson from Institute of the Future, and Hillary, all together in the back of his car, about a few days ago, last Saturday. It was the funniest picture. They're like, we're in the middle of this, but hey. We'll talk to EVs in a bit. But this is the city issue.
Apparently,
you're talking about mayors appointing chief resilience officers.
Yes.
What is that about? What is a chief resilience officer?
All right, so I want to just
why this motion?
I want to go back to one place first. Awesome, Jen Palka. Awesome.
We had her on the show.
Yeah, and we've had her at the Verge event a couple of times at Green Biz because she really is inspiring this civic troublemaking, I suppose, at the coding level. But chief resilience
couple team with
absolutely
Tim O'Reilly as well.
Yeah.
Right there.
So chief resilience officers. 4 years ago, I think there was one or two in the entire United States. What is this? It's really it's this role that has arisen as a result of these massive events like Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Katrina. Let's be real. The concept of climate change and whether or not it's happening or not doesn't resonate with everyone. We'll just go there. We'll just make that simple statement.
No,
however,
it doesn't.
However, when you talk to someone in the city government, or you talk to someone at the state level, or you talk to someone at the federal level, the idea that you need to create a resilient community, something that can withstand things that might be caused by climate change, then you kind of get into this area where people are willing to listen. And the idea of the chief resilience officer, it's an overlay. It's like one of these classic overlay functions, right? Probably no staff, maybe a couple people. But the job of that person is really to make sure that any infrastructure planning, any new roads, any new sewers, any new anything, right? The broadband that they're talking about in New York, that those things can withstand what used to be a century sort of storm, but then is becoming much more frequent. I live in New Jersey, so clearly very keenly aware of what happened during Sandy, and I don't know if you remember. I mean, New York, that the tip of Manhattan was out for weeks.
One of our sales reps, one of our sales guys. I mean, he basically was homeless. Right, his building flooded. I mean, it was moving to Florida.
Incredible human tragedy, right? Just at the scale of the personal human tragedy was just enormous. But also, it just underscored the incredible weakness of coastal, in particular coastal cities, right? You know, New Orleans. So the idea that you will not plan something new, a new investment at the city level, without thinking about those potential impacts, mostly rising seas, is something that's becoming more and more common. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and one of the reasons you have so many more of these is I think there's like 25 of these guys guys and gals in the United States, and the Rockefeller Foundation is helping fund some of these positions through the 100 Resilient Cities movement, right? So partly a funding, like the money was there, so this is becoming more common. So I'll put that right out there. I don't know if some of these cities would have been able to try it without that funding. But there's 80 around the world now. Most of the people most of the cities in that program do have a chief resilience officer.
It's a great website to check out if folks haven't seen it. 100resilientcities.org, and lots of very interesting factors. Oh, sorry, Val, go ahead.
You mentioned in your post there was only four of them a few years ago. They're 80 now. You referenced Mayor Blasio talking about the importance of a community working together. It's kind of coincidental we have Miguel on the show as well. Yeah. And about 32 cities have published their comprehensive plans. Do you think it's the CTO, CIO that will ultimately, partner with the chief resiliency officers, because resiliency in a digital economy goes beyond just
absolutely, totally, and it's so linked, right? Because of if you think about a disaster recovery situation, if you don't have those communications at the ground level or at the air level, you cannot be resilient, right? You can't respond, and many cities have had a huge trouble responding, and the FEMA funding isn't there in the same way it has been before. So these cities are being more reliant on themselves, right? And this is, you've seen this, you've heard, I've talked about this before. You see these communities realizing that they can't count on they can't count on the federal support anymore. I don't know if they really ever could, but they thought they could. So you see people respond, and if you look at Boston, they're the ones that most recently published their plan. I actually spoke with several of the representatives at the event, and absolutely, I actually asked them about the CIO, because the CIO is actually speaking at my Verge event in September, and absolutely, they're like this, right? They're working with him to get that infrastructure in place to be able to deliver for many of the things that we were just talking about, for the community input, right? So Boston, not only did it have the input on the digital level, they went out, I think it was like hundreds of meetings. Like, it just was incredible the way they went out into the community. They were meeting people on buses. They were going to like the city. I mean, seriously. And that to me, I totally respect the digital conversation we were just having, and awesome. I love Asheville. Like, wow, what a great place. But I also believe that we're going back to this sort of grassroots, person-to-person outreach that in a way we haven't before. And part of that, I think, is enabled by the digital, right? So you can take certain things at that level, get them dealt with in a different way at a scale, and then you can go out and be more personal and really go and get that face-to-face.
Absolutely. And the two CIOs that we just had, our CTO, CIO, are some of the most social technologists. So they're always sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter and blogs and speaking at events. So they're building that grassroots collaboration and through immense amount of communication based on their own personal sacrifice and time. So tremendous energy to build community awareness.
Well, switching topics to EV, which is hot. The Model 3 launched not on Friday, but the first 30 were delivered, I believe. First 50, actually. 30 customers got them, 20 in the back end. Pretty interesting launch. Was watching that live. But what does it mean right? The Model 3 launches. Are we ready for it? Is the infrastructure there? Like, what are we going to do when everybody's in the HOV lane?
Do you know what? I'm less worried about the HOV lane than I am worried about the charging.
Yeah.
And what that will do to different parts of the infrastructure. Like, if 100 cars show up in a parking lot at the same time and need to charge, what does that mean?
I will show you that next door here.
You will, right?
It is literally funny. There's a valet, there's an attendant, there's a guy that kicks you out every 2 hours if you're there too long. It's just kind of funny to watch.
Oh wow! You know, so speaks.
I'll drive over there too if you want to take a look.
Maybe we're hitting the tipping point at which now some of the infrastructure will get deployed, right? So people have been waiting at the sea level. I was just a great example. I was just at the NRG headquarters in Princeton, New Jersey, at the end of May. And I was in the parking lot, I was full disclosure, internal combustion engine. I was driving my car around, and
it's called an ICE car. She's in an ICE.
I'm in an ICE car, right? But I'm driving around, and the spots right close to the building were all EV marked, and I was like, oh gosh, I mean, I didn't want to park in it. I didn't want to like be the person, right, that took the wrong spot. And then I realized, though, that they weren't hooked up, that they weren't, the charges weren't, there were some chargers there, but they were really, they were just waiting, right, for the reason to so, and the parking lot they have there is solar, right, so they have a whole array out there with inverters that can be dialed up and down. So, but the point I'm making is that there's just sort of like this waiting and waiting. And the thing that the Tesla 3 will maybe inspire is some of the investments that are happening by the utilities, right? And now we see utility companies, not just the independent charging networks, really trying to understand what this means for them. Do I, Mr. or Ms. Utility Executive, need to build that network? Do I need to be the one in that city that has control of that? Can I use those car batteries for extra power? Like, because if you think about how long do you, Ray, maybe you're an aberration on this one, but how often do you spend in your car? Like your car, you have your car 24 hours a day.
No, I mean, personally, like most people, very little. And
they sit there, right? So that car could be just this enormous energy storage device. And so for me, that's and right now the big gating factor, I'm waiting for you to say it, is the two-way. Right, the vehicle.
Exactly.
And there's some company, Nuvi is one of the ones that's testing this, but you see some experiments. The technology really isn't there yet to enable that. But what this delivery, could do is get the utility companies to finally state their plans. Is this car any better than the Volt or the Leaf, or I don't know. I mean, it's certainly got the cool factor. It's got Elon behind it, but
Elon powered the movie projector that he was using from the car.
But I would also, is it really as mainstream as they say? I mean, it's supposed to be priced at $35,000, right? But look at what you get for that. I don't know that anyone would want to buy that model. Like it doesn't. It's like it's that kind of classic. Like here's the base level sticker price, and then all of a sudden you realize what you get for that. So
it's probably about 50 when it's all said and done. I had a calculator on my blog once on what the cost of ownership was, and even if you bought the Tesla, the S at 100,000, over 7 to 8 years, if you kept the car, it's about the same. Because you're not paying for the same amount of maintenance and the engine and the checkups and all that, but you're putting it all up front, which is the challenge.
You're putting it up front. The thing is to get people thinking about this, right? So the big factor of buying an electric vehicle is the fuel costs over time. So if I pay $50,000 for a regular fuel powered, gasoline powered car, is that really the same as paying $50,000 for a Tesla Model 3? On paper, up front, to me, Mr. or Ms. Consumer, yeah. But to the person who sits down and thinks about over time and looks at that like investment over time, no, it clearly is the better, the Tesla would be clearly the better investment. But people don't think that way right now when they buy a car. And so
no, and it's what's gas price in New Jersey? Full service? What are you about, $1.99?
No, we're higher than that. I like pumping my gas. I tell you, I'm like pumping.
You're such a New Jersey Oregon person.
Right. You know, my friends are like, "Oh, I'm so happy I don't have to pump gas." Right. Just whatever. But no, it's about 240 right now. But wow, I mean, like I've been to Hawaii. I know what it costs there. I know what it costs in California. I mean, we're lucky here, honestly. But anyway,
the reviews for the Model 3 have been stunningly good.
Yes.
Stunningly good.
Stunningly good.
I want to read in Wired. Jack Stewart wrote, "The arrival of Model 3 signals a new chapter in automotive history, one that eases 100+ year of gas engine replacement with technology, design, performance, hot enough to make electric vehicles more aspirational." So a lot of analysts speak of the Model 3 as a tipping point, potential tipping point in terms of EV. You wrote a recent post that mentioned the impact of EV on urban living, and you said you got to think of them as huge batteries. It's about the driver and the passenger and how much data-driven drivers have become, data junkies. And the last thing you mentioned was you posed a question. You said, "Did you know there was 30 parking spots for every person that lives in Houston?" And you mentioned that EVs will now put people back at the center of urban development. Can you expand a bit on that?
So here's the thing. I mean, there are two things. One is that I think that the city, particularly cities, right, they need to think about, number one, how they support these things. Like, what do they have their own? Do they have public charging networks?
Nope.
Do they get into this? Do they buy fleets of electric vehicles, like a Zip car model, and offer them to citizens so that they can control who's on the road, so that they can control the level of emissions in the city? Could they start, one of the big concerns about, a transition over to autonomous vehicles and to models where transportation is a service and not, people don't necessarily own their own car, right? Like, why would you, is there a point at which if I lived in New York City, I wouldn't want to own my own car, like, just why? Yeah. But one of the big concerns, and you hear it all, it's crazy, parking revenue and parking tickets, and how much, like, as we get to smarter transportation models, how that revenue goes away, and
what cars?
And what are you as a city going to do to make that up? So you could think about it. Okay, if people don't want to own cars, why do you have to let the private sector be the sole breadwinner, right? Why should they be the only place that is able to earn revenue from that transition? Why shouldn't I have electric vehicles that maybe are shuttles that could take 10 or 15 people? We tend to think of a car, but there's going to be lots of different shapes and sizes of these electric vehicles, and especially the ones that are electric and autonomous. You could set up completely new transportation networks, or have hubs that get to a certain point and then take you a place where you haven't been before. Could serve a new route, or could serve a route that doesn't quite have the ridership to have a full bus or a subway or something built out. So that's what I'm thinking there. And then, like I said, eventually it will become a load balancing thing for utility companies, because as we get into more distributed models where you have companies investing in solar panels, where you have cities starting to have their own solar arrays in San Francisco, how do you balance that load? How do you make sure the peak, can you use those cars for peak demand? Again, I mean, that's the sort of vision. I don't know when the heck that's going to happen, but the utility companies are finally investing in that, and they're investing in that with cities.
Sure.
And with regions.
Is it a coincidence that Musk is also deeply engaged in solar, rooftops? Will the cars eventually have that capability and be powered by solar technologies? And now, you have some incredibly disruptive combination of technologies that can, as you said, reimagine transportation in cities.
Yeah. That was, I think that was one of the original ideas of the Solar City acquisition, certainly, and then the whole power walls concept, and what do you do with the extra batteries? How do you recycle these batteries, like, that come out of the cars? Like, do they still have a useful life? Where do you put them? Can you reuse them in different ways, in different storage devices? And by the way, how cool, completely random non sequitur, how cool is it that Bill Joy is getting into like batteries? Did you see that? I mean, seriously, he's becoming he's working on battery technology tomorrow. Now I'm like, wow, Bill Joy's son.
We wants to challenge lithium ion. I mean, that was a very the bulletproof battery. I think that's what he's talking about, right? Solid polymer or something.
Right, crazy.
Electrolyte batteries or something.
So so you know, there's some really profoundly difficult questions that need to be answered. So back to your original question, Bala. What do you do with that? Why would you have why do you have that many parking spots?
Yeah.
I mean, and couldn't that land be better used for neighborhood hubs? That maybe there's a transportation hub as part of it, and then you have sort of these neighborhoods, and we get back to the idea of neighborhoods in cities again, right? Where there's a hub of places where people, to go back to the original, community idea, people actually meeting and talking to each other in a public space.
Oh my gosh, real conversation.
And there's green space, and
humans, eye contact.
You can walk to the restaurant, or you can walk to go pick up, the food that you need. It makes
a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
We are talking here with Heather Clancy, editorial director of Green Biz, a little bit about resilience officers, future of cities, electric vehicles, of course, and what's happening next as we get into smarter energy. So, hey, thanks a lot for being on the show. Thanks for being our repeat guest, and of course, one of our faves.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Have a super weekend, guys.
You as well. You as well. Great. I mean, talk Miguel and Heather and Jonathan. I mean, this is where experts come to share. And it's certainly the favorite part of my week. So.
We just don't have enough time. 20 minutes goes by like this.
I know.
People keep telling us like videos should only be like, 5 minutes. We're like, no, I mean, this is some great dialogue, great conversation every Friday. Who do we have coming up next week?
We have Tasha Keeney, who is an analyst at ARK Invest, who's going to come and drop some science on us. We have a chief digital officer who is really working hard to become perhaps one of the top blockchain experts in the world, Richie Otaro, CDO of Quintilius IMS. He's an author of the new book, Blockchain Trust Companies. Every company is at risk of being disrupted by a trusted version of itself. So we're going to deep dive into blockchain and talk not just about cryptocurrencies, but using blockchain as a framework that will certainly impact every business in every industry of all sizes. And then we end with Ophir Gottlieb, CEO and co-founder of Capital Market Laboratories. He's a thought leader. He's all over media. Every time I check on BNN in Canada and abroad, I see him sharing his wisdom. So it's going to be a very heavy-packed Disrupt TV next week.
Awesome. Episode 74. Be there. Be square. If it's Friday, it's Disrupt TV, the place to share.
See you, everyone.